You will come to see that this dear school, Earth, is not such a mess as some would like to think, and I say like to think. For there is always that force working in some. It is not really them, but a force they have allowed to work through them, as all forces should be seen, that delights in seeing things in the most negative way possible, as they feel it easier to criticize and condemn rather than take a step into the light and do something constructive and alleviate those conditions. Though they would find, if they could see what their condemnation and criticism does to their growth, that it is much easier in the long run to be constructive and spend the extra energy than to dawdle in the roadside criticizing others and have to spend a great deal of energy later to get themselves out of the fix into which their opening of themselves to a negative force has placed them. Have you ever noticed how visitors to a kindergarten will criticize and say what unruly children these are, until you ask them, what were you like when you were in that grade? And can you do any better? My goodness, no, Earth is not in such a bad state, and I don't want to hear any of you saying anything to the contrary, and believe me, I have better hearing than you can imagine. And that some of you might like to think. And I know what I am saying. Don't you forget that. There is no nonsense whatever about this path. That does not mean you are not to have a good time, dear ones. Just the opposite. In fact, I hope that you will come to enjoy and appreciate life more abundantly. But I will not have my students, and all of you, even those aware of the guidance they may be receiving from others of us, are my students, saying things to the contrary of what I have said. For one of the first things that you must learn on this path is obedience. Yes, with a capital O. For although you are always free to go your own way, you will soon learn that it is in obedience that your true freedom lies. For we have tread the exacting steps of this perfect path to mastery before you. We see what you need, what is best for you, though often that which you need may not at the moment seem very pleasant to you. Still, it is what you need, and only we in the ascended state can see that. And later you will see why. You will look back on some trying experience you may have had to go through, and you will say, I am glad that I was obedient. I am glad that I faced that and went through with it. I have learned something, and it has made me a stronger person. You see, it is really common sense. While we were still on the topic of obedience, let me say that never will you be asked, as a student of freedom, to give obedience to any dogma, cult, or teacher that in any way contradicts these teachings or deprives you in any way of your own freedom of self-determination at all times. You are my children, and as I am freedom, you shall be free. This is my eternal decree. However, as you have chosen this path of the Ascended Masters, and as the Ascended Master is one with your own God, presence, to be obedient to us is quite a different story, is it not? So when I say that Earth is in a better condition than you would think from reading the papers, I do not want to hear you going from place to place like the prophets of doom the world is already so burdened with, saying this or that is going to happen. For it isn't. You do not have the perspective that I have. And when you do have my perspective, then you will see that many a cloud has a silver lining. The catastrophes which seem to some to always be hovering on the horizon do not mark an end, rather a beginning. And what a beginning it shall be when the silver lining of all these clouds is revealed and the glorious new age is finally born. No matter how great the pain of childbirth, is there any mother who is not grateful, not glad to be a mother? And those who are helping me bring forth this new age are also mothers. And I say, be grateful. Despite the suffering, be grateful for what you have already attained, as well as that for which you are yet striving. And there is nothing wrong with striving, for I do not want to mislead by those who claim that the goal Liberation from suffering is attained by not striving, the absence of all desire. This unfortunate misunderstanding, whether it has come about through being misled by one to whom one gives one's obedience, or whether through one's own inherent laziness and inertia, leads not to any liberation, but to one being more bound to the earthly condition, the bonds of which mental delusion may sometimes last through many lifetimes. A sad state of affairs, as though there could ever actually be a final state of attainment. How could there be? There is never an end to growth, dear ones. Whatever one attains on this path, or any path for that matter, is obtained only by one's desire to attain. Desire is the source of creation, and pure desire, the sincere longing for union with and service to your own God-self, will ever take you to that true liberation that is eternal freedom. Dear ones, how could it be any other way? Life is growth, involution and evolution, contraction and expansion, ever rising on the great eternal spiral of creation. And the desire not to grow, to be static, no matter how blissful that status may be, can only be a moment, one moment in the great sea of creation, in which every particle of light is an organic growing member, and the motivating force of the divine organism is God's desire to express greater and ever greater love throughout every part of his ever-expanding universe, every part and member of which has a mission to fulfill. And so you see how you are only cutting yourselves off by seeking some static, unchanging void where nothing grows, for life everywhere is growth, and conscious growth is the consciousness of God. You see what a limited and selfish view of things it is to say, I will go off somewhere by myself and find bliss, and what happens to the rest of the world is not my concern? For if these apostles of bliss were to achieve the balanced consciousness of God to any degree, they would discover that you cannot achieve true freedom except in the world that all others are a part of your own self. There is only one mind, and the surest way to the consciousness of that one is to serve others. So you see, dear ones, there is really nothing for it but to get it there and help others. And the greatest way to help others is to first place yourself in service to your own God-self, the I Am presence. And that presence will always show you what you are to do, and will manifest the consciousness through you that is necessary for that attainment. There is nothing that affects others that, until you are master, does not also in some way affect you. And there is nothing that you do, feel, or allow to affect you in any way that does not go forth and affect others. So it is about time you realize that you are all in this together, and that all of you are brothers and sisters, and must learn to love and help each other. And I would hope that you take that to heart. There is nothing that would aid each of you individually quite so much. Remember that one brother said, in that you do unto the least of my little ones, you do also unto me. And remember also, my children, that I, Saint Germain, though I am not of the world, am many times in the work I do, very much in the world, and you may have already, or perhaps will again, meet me without being aware, for I will not introduce myself, of that you may be sure. Let service without concern for self, but for your God-self alone, be your eternal guide. If you would be a master, I say act like a master. As you serve, I am with you always. Turn to me in the silence within. I am ready to take your hand. Will you take mine? In love, I am yours. I thank you. Saint Germain.